Welcome to the messy middle of entrepreneurship, unfiltered and unapologetic. Uncensored Entrepreneurs, hosted by Star Cod, Robert Wall, and Tina Torres-Wilson, brings you real stories from the trenches of building a business. Those late nights, hard lessons, big wins, and everything in between. This is where the truth about entrepreneurship lives. No fluff, no filters, just raw, honest conversations with founders who have lived it. So, if you're over the highlight reel and you're ready for the real deal, hit play.
A lot of entrepreneurs spend years building the business they thought they wanted. Then one day, they wake up exhausted, disconnected, and wondering why success doesn't feel the way they thought it would. Today's guest, Dustin Wheeler, believes the problem isn't ambition. It's the place we're creating from. Dustin is a conscious creation coach, speaker, podcast host, and founder of the Spiritually Kinky movement. Through a blend of neuroscience, nervous system education, identity redesign, and embodiment work, she helps high-achieving women stop creating from survival mode and start creating from true choice. Her work challenges the idea that we have to constantly fix ourselves before we're worthy of success. Instead, she teaches women how to reconnect their power, pleasure, and purpose so they can build lives and businesses that they feel as good as they look. Welcome, Dustin. We're so excited to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. I love your podcast.
Thank you. Likewise, as we were talking just a little bit before going live, I haven't had the opportunity, as Star has, to know every single thing about you and your community. I'm super excited, though, because the things that I have read already, I just have to say, I think this is a good place for just to kick things off with our audience to understand just a little bit more about you and your journey. If you can give us a breakdown of that, and please make sure that in that intro, you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the brand Spiritually Kinky, because I'm a brand strategist. And so when I see things like that, I'm like, that's pretty powerful. It's definitely eye-catching. So I'm interested to find out about you and your journey and what led you to Spiritually Kinky.
Absolutely. I spent the first probably 30 years of my life following what people told me would make me happy. Get a good career, make a lot of money, get married, have children, get a house, and then you'll be happy. And meanwhile, I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of instructions that got passed down in our line that were not healthy, that were extremely harming in a lot of different ways. So I grew up with a lot of those patterns and just always had this innate feeling in me like there's got to be a different way. But I followed that path. I excelled in every single position that I went in corporate America. I would literally start in one department. I would make my way through almost every department, know how everything worked, excel, and then move on to a next corporate position. And along the last of my journey in corporate America, I had a serious pain pill problem because I had a dislocated shoulder where the medical system just really let me fall through the cracks. I was drinking, I was smoking, I was using everything possible to cope with a life that wasn't meant for me. And nobody knew. I was still excelling. I was still high performing. I was the one that everybody went to. And there was this period where I knew that I was supposed to change everything. I didn't know how I was going to change. And somehow Tony Robbins came through on my radar. And I heard him talking about changing your identity. So I knew that I needed to stop all these habits. I didn't have the support. I out-therapist my therapist. And I just didn't know what to do. And so when that came through, I decided that I was going to just do one thing, and that I was going to no longer identify as a smoker. And when I did that, my life began to change. I also realized at that point, I had been walking through corporate America with no intentional value. And what I mean by that, if somebody was to ask me, what values are you walking in? I didn't know. And I had not held any boundaries my whole life with family, bosses, anything. And I had not developed any self-trust in myself because I was walking around what I consider valueless. And I don't mean value as an innate worth. I mean value as like in skills that you build. So my commitment value was terrible. My keeping confidence was terrible. I would just sink to the toxicity of my environment. And when I realized that, I made a decision. My next decision is I was no longer going to lie. And the moment I made that decision, I started packing up my desk because I knew that that was going to be the end of my working in the corporate America. And then one day I literally just could not go. There was a bunch of stuff that happened, really toxic stuff, called out a bunch of things nobody likes in corporate America when you're the one that's calling out the toxicity. And that was me. And that's been me my whole life. And so at that point, I left and didn't have a parachute and was like, well, I guess we're doing this now. So I started studying Tony Robbins and Joe Dispenza. And through an experience that I had when I left corporate America, I was having panic attacks so bad that I would be in my kitchen and I couldn't move. And so I started literally just take one more step, get in the living room, sit down, you'll be okay. So I just would physically make myself take the step. And I started thinking of a friend of mine who had passed away 19 years prior. And when I thought about him, I always put my hand over my heart because he was just my light and my love. And so I just started doing this and 10 minutes a day, putting my hand over my heart and realizing all these changes that started to happen. And I didn't find out till 2 years later that there's actually so much science behind what was happening in my body. It was just something my body naturally gravitated towards. And then the last piece of this was going to his 20th death day anniversary. I got to meet his heart recipient. When I asked Kevin if I could put my hand on his heart, I felt our heartbeat sync up because I had been practicing for 2+ years with heart energy. And I walked away and I felt this wave and this vision just hit me. And it was this globe, and everybody was standing on this globe, and there were certain people positioned around the globe that were kneeling, and they began to stand up. And as they began to stand up, they were taller than everybody else, and they started to outreach their hands. And as they closed these circuits, everybody in the center got brighter, and everybody that was holding hands started to get brighter. And I just went, Ryan, what did you just give me? And it was in the space between heartbeats. And so began my journey of creating my first corporation was One Tribe Rising. That's the umbrella. And then realizing through all of the personal development work I've done up till 3 years ago, I still felt broken. I had worked on my mindset. I had done all of these things. So I couldn't figure out why I still felt broken, why I still didn't feel like I was enough. And then I happened upon the conscious education that I teach now. And I went, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Through this journey, I've had more than 40,000 conversations with people, and I've been paying attention to what they're saying, how they act. And what I discovered is that everybody wants to be seen, wants to be felt, and wants to live free. And so through embracing contradictions, that we are this creative force inside that grew the body, that's wearing this body, we are also the human, and it's okay to be both. And Spiritually Kinky was always about creating the path to being fully seen, deeply felt, and wildly free, and connecting with others that are willing to stand up and let their light be seen in the same way.
Wow. That is so powerful. Thank you, by the way, for being so just vulnerable with us, with your story. And you already know this because it's the work you do, how our journey, the good and the bad, bring us to this place. I talk a great deal about alignment all the time. And it is so interesting because you tapped right into that. The fact that you can have a strong mindset. People read all these books all the time. They'll go through their courses. They'll build a strong mindset, and then they still feel unfulfilled. And it's because of the alignment, that soul work, the heart work that is missing. And so, yeah, thank you so much for that.
So, Dustin, you now work with ambitious women, and these women are women who are often successful on paper, just like you were at corporate. What patterns do you continue to see over and over again with these women?
So The patterns that I see probably, and not just with women, everybody, is 99% of people are living and they're creating from survival. We've been so conditioned, our nervous system, our brain, everything has been conditioned in survival. So we're experiencing the survival emotions, the numbness, the depression, the anxiety, the boredom, the quick fix with all the dopamine now that's running through. And we are also creating from that untrue identity, that not it identity. And what I've discovered through what I've learned and the premise that I teach on is if you take the action from the intention, and this is the unconscious intention that you're not it, you can create the thing and you still won't feel fulfilled because your nervous system won't allow you to have it. The number one premise that I teach on that I'm like, you can't skip this step. But when you start, you're going to skip this step all the time is that you're it in here, right? You're it in the now and you're it in the now then. And that takes some reconditioning, that takes some recoding. It's not because we're broken. And I think that that's what I have seen with almost all the people I've met is that if you really have an honest conversation, most people think that they're innately defective or broken. And they're spending their life trying to build this $1 million vision, but they're building it on quicksand.
So true. Have you been reading my books before you got on today?
It's where the level of consciousness is rising, my friend.
I already feel this connection. And what a great analogy. I didn't want to overlook previously when you talked about the heartbeat in sync. So powerful. You probably even noticed my eyes glazed over because of just things in my life. And when I think about that absolute, this tapping into the true soul, that soul work is missing so often. We, as perfectionists, educators, coaches, everything that we do, even in the mindset where we're trying to do personal development, it's all there. It's somewhat under the surface. Most of it's surface level, but it's somewhat there. But we don't get even deeper. And so we feel, like you said, disconnected with our products and services. And then we start thinking, in order to make a change, I need a new product. I need a new service. You talked about dopamine fixes is a big thing, right? Because I'm all about that health movement as well. And we're always looking for the magic pill that will make us feel better. Anyways, one of the things that I wanted to continue to expand on is why do you think that people continue, or if anything, it's good for our audience to understand, just continue to repeat the same patterns over and over again when, as I was just stating, they know better or they have that high intellectual level. We see it in corporate America all the time.
Well, that was me. I repeated the patterns of drinking. I repeated the patterns of narcissistic, abusive relationships. And it didn't matter. I would change faces. I would change names. I would change circumstance. The end result would always be the same. And the end result was always validating that I'm not it. See, it is me. I do get rejected. I do experience heartbreak. Nobody wants me. I'm not being chosen. Those were my stories from how I grew up and just repeated it. So that's really why I got into this. And I'm going to drop something because once you see this, it's almost impossible to forget. And I just want to give this to you and I want to give this to your audience is that your success and failure isn't personal. It's structural. And these are just the premises that I teach on. So it's the most I've experienced that we can take it in and we can use it and we can empower ourselves to step into a creative orientation. So if there's other people that have different perspectives, this is not the only way, but this is the way through my experience that I have found it makes so much sense. So your self-conscious is rooted in judgment. It's the good, the bad, the right, the wrong. It's developed when we're younger, and your self-conscious speaks in the language of thoughts. Your unconscious speaks in the language of emotions, and your unconscious is what allows or denies you to have what you want. So your self-conscious wants to have a good life, and it's going this way. And it's like, I want a good life. There's a future that's free of the wound, where the future is better than the now. I'm going this way. And then you've got your unconscious, which is what allows or denies you to have what you want, is rooted in safety. And what it knows is safe is what you have survived enough times. Here's where I helped people shift. And this is where it gets a little bumpy at first, because I'm like, okay, we made the shift. Now hold on, because it's going to get a little bumpy. Because then we've got our super conscious, which is the insight, the intuition, and the information. and the superconscious is unconditional. So the self-conscious and the unconscious, when we're creating in a structure, and there are 3 different types of structure that we can create in. There's the stuck structure, which is like the fence post, and it's stuck, like too many ideas, overwhelmed, not moving, tension is just stuck. And I don't know if I've ever created anything like that. I have certainly created a lot in the stuck structure. Then there's the oscillating structure, and that's like a rocking chair. So this is the back and forth between the self-conscious and the unconscious, one trying to be free of the wound, and the other one, it's in the wound and it won't allow you to have what you want. And so you swing back and forth. So the shift that I help people make is from being the oldest version of their past self into the youngest version of their future self. And now it's like setting a GPS point. So now the GPS, instead of the past reality and current reality, now you're setting up a structure where it's desired end result emotion, desired end result reality, current reality. So instead of a pendulum, it becomes like a rubber band. And since tension seeks resolution, if you can hold the creative tension, it will draw you towards what you're practicing that end result of. But you cannot skip the step that you are the primary creator in your life. You are it. You are the creative force energy, because you have to take your power back and practice being it. And if you skip that step, you can take the same action in 2 different structures and get 2 different results. Because in the oscillating structure, the path of least resistance is back and forth. In a creative structure, now you're creating like a wheel. And now with the desired end result, you're harnessing your conscious choice, your conscious focus, which is your attention and your intention, to flow towards what you desire, like what you would just love to create, and not what you have survived. But the moment that you do that, all the resistance comes up. So that's where I work with people with different neuro-emotional tools in that process when the resistance is coming up, to do something called the recode that leverages the reconsolidation moment in your brain. Just like you can forget your keys, you can forget your trauma. And so little by little, we teach the unconscious that it's okay to let go of that emotional charge and teach what you're creating is actually safe to have. And when there's no resistance, you can just create it. You don't have to fix or heal yourself or improve yourself. This is what a lot of people don't understand, because we've been taught to tie our worth to our productivity. We've been taught that we need to be better. We need to do something, have something, be something, and then we can create what we want. But it's not true.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation. Before we continue, one thing I hear all the time, especially in the early stages of building a business, is how exhausting it is trying to manage everything on your own. I remember feeling like I had a dozen tabs open in my brain at all times. That's exactly what inspired me to create She Has Clients, an all-in-one sales and marketing platform for entrepreneurs who want to grow their business without patching together a million tools. If that sounds like what you need, you can learn more at shehasclients.com. Now let's get back to the conversation.
I think of like self-sabotage, right? We're there all the time. You know what you want. You put things in action, and then there's that resistance. I think I was sharing this with Star and Tina a while back, in the respect that one of the worst times in my life was tied to my highest monetary production. I was making the most money, and that crash and burn, still to this day from time to time, whenever I'm doing really, really well and I hit the ceiling in something, I tend to pull back and resist, because my body keeps the score, right? I'm basically going, oh, if I do this, am I going to crash and burn even harder?
We throw these words around and we just made it all up anyway. We've put labels to everything, and everybody thinks that we're all working off the same definitions, and we're not. And so when I use subconscious, unconscious, and nervous system as a group that works together in allowing or denying you to have what you want. And there's capacity there. Do I know how to explain that scientifically, the capacity of a nervous system? No. But I also know that if your nervous system doesn't feel safe in it, if your unconscious is running 95% of the show, it's going to go, no, 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 no. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. And so through the entrepreneur experience, and you guys, I'm sure, have experienced this, when you make your first dollar, you're like, oh my God, I made a dollar. Then you make your first 1,000 or your first 5,000. And every time it stretches you more. And it comes that process of, yes, I'm calling it in, I'm creating it, I'm taking action towards it. But now I'm teaching my body that I can actually hold it. Because what happens is our stories create this positive and negative charge around it. And this is where I see a lot of entrepreneurs swinging. And it's actually when you can dissipate that charge and just create, then you don't have those super high highs and super low lows, because it's not that you're trying to avoid the pain of your past. You're creating in a new way where, yes, it's exciting, but it's not that same charge, because your nervous system doesn't care if it's a positive or negative charge. It just sees charge. So if that's unsafe, then because it's your focus for trying to get away from it, you'll actually create bigger swings.
So when that nervous system is unregulated, how does that impact decision making, leadership, and growth? What can we do to fix that?
It's not about fixing it, right? There's nothing wrong with it. We're just designed for survival. So in my opinion, if we're going to create new leaders that want to step forward in a new way, that want to create innovation and creation outside of what we've created before, it has to start internally with us. And then when there's enough people that are, I hate to say, at a higher level of consciousness, I don't necessarily mean that, but creating in a creative orientation in the way of humanity, in the way of our natural creative expression, then the side effect is your mindset changes. The side effect is you heal. The side effect is your nervous system regulates. The side effect is all of those things. We're just not starting on the stone that we have to fix, heal, or improve ourselves. We're starting on the stone of what would we just love to create, because we'd love to see it birthed into existence. Like Thomas Edison with the light bulb, or Albert Einstein, or any of these. I mean, you look around, all of the things around us were birthed in imagination first. What I find is when women come to me, the hardest thing to do is to claim what you want, because we've been so conditioned to play it small and to edit it and to be like, oh, but, and that's okay. That's part of the process. But to be able to stick with it long enough where you're like, yes, I am claiming that. That is what I want to create. And then just knowing that the path isn't puppies and rainbows the whole way, right? If you're like, I want to flex this new muscle, then the world goes, okay, we're going to give you some weights to be able to flex this muscle with. And that doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. But when that's your GPS, you know where you're going. And now you're working with spiritual laws and principles of creation that are actually, they have your back, because there are laws of creation and stages and all of that. And when you know that, it makes the storms that we experience, because we experience storms, but it's our self-conscious who's tried to convince us that there's a perfect path. It's our self-conscious that's tried to convince us that the future will be better than the now, and the now is all we have. So once you start practicing that, your nervous system naturally regulates. When you start practicing heart-head harmony, your body starts moving in the way of life instead of just survival. And it's all just side effects of us just tapping into what we really are. And we're creative force beings that want to be expressed.
And we've been programmed to avoid pain, right? Or any of these traumas or tribulations that we've experienced in the past. So again, that prevents us from continuing down that journey, because we're like, no, that hurts. There's pain attached to that, right? Is this a little bit of what you're leading into? We talk about creation, because you talk about creation a lot, which I absolutely love. So is that the part where pleasure is part of this creation process? Expand on that a little bit more. And what does that mean outside of, for those that are just listening, what most people may interpret it as?
That's the draw of the spiritually kinky. It's about embracing contradictions. And I don't care. I have talked to people in the church. I have talked to millionaires. I have talked to homeless people and everybody in between. And when I gave them the name of the brand, they were like, ooh.
Robert said, I need to know about this brand.
I'm like, I got you. Believe me, because I get what it does and it's a pattern interrupt. And it also was from my life of that there is no perfect. We are innately perfect, but we are also walking around in this fumbling, ungraceful, weird shaped body that we create based on instructions that we didn't have any choice over. So I think with that, conscious creation is about first giving yourself permission to love something into existence. To be like, I love that. Start off with foundational true choices, but one of my personal true choices is I choose to create a brand that touches the hearts, the minds, and bodies of millions of people. That is my guiding light every day. But in doing something I've never done before, I don't know how it's going to happen. So I get direction from that future self that I embody, that future end result emotion that's teaching my nervous system to be like, okay, what's my next best step? And getting direction from me instead of getting direction from everybody else because they actually don't know how that version of me comes to play. And in that experience, what I always talk about is creation is one of the kinkiest things that you can do. It's gonna stretch you, it's gonna scare you, it's gonna excite you. You're gonna be so seen, but ultimately extremely exposed, and it's all of it. And it's also what I call gonna wreck you beautifully because the old foundations, when you've built on quicksand and we have old structures, they have to go. We can't carry the old structures into the new. And I really hope that's what's happening in the world outside right now is even though it looks like chaos, I hope that this is the breakdown before the breakthrough. That this is old structures can't move forward. And I hope that this is in the way of our humanity because it has to happen if we're going to create in a new way. And I highly believe that education systems should have this education, corporations should have this education. We should be teaching the science of this to first graders and up in a way that's at that level, but they get it more than adults do.
Quite honestly, even marriages should have this. When you think of that, people drag the old into the new, which then reverts right back to the same resistance.
Being an entrepreneur, that is also extremely difficult in messaging because it really is for anybody. And one of the things I've had the privilege of being able to witness is so many people that were vulnerable with me because they felt safe in saying, I feel broken. I look like this on the outside, but inside I feel broken. And I go, you're in the right place at the right time and you're not broken. You've just been creating in a structure that has been handed down. And once I share this conscious education, I hope it's just planting seeds everywhere because what I do understand, at least from my limited experience with it, is that to level up in consciousness as humanity, it doesn't take everybody. So I'm the kind of person that felt like I was given this vision and I realized that it doesn't take everybody. And I go, okay, how many people do we need? And then I set off on my path of marketing and through all of my fumbles with that, where nobody showed up or 100 people showed up in the path in between.
And that's part of the creation, though, right? Because I think all three of us can relate to this for a fact that when you put on an event or you launch a course or you're doing a boot camp or whatever it is, right? And you can sometimes have a turnout that exceeds your expectations, or it ends up being one person that's sitting there. But it is part of that creation. And I think that if we embrace it rather than seeing that as a defeat, as a failure or a flaw, it's part of the journey that brings us closer to the ultimate creation, pleasure.
And too many people are trying to do it on their own. Too many people feel disconnected, and they are. And there's no juice when you're running in survival, there's no juice there. And the pleasure, the play, you can give yourself permission to play, to have fun, to wonder, to come from a place of no past. And that's where I start with my clients is getting them into a place of no past to say, okay, what would you just love to create? And the permission is the first part. And then surrendering control, which is also where the kinky comes in, because you have to surrender control. Because if you're creating something you've never created before, and especially if you're thrown around as the generational rule breaker, which I've identified with that before, because I've been in the one in the family that calls out the patterns, that sees everything. And let me tell you, that's not been a popular position in my family. That's usually who gravitates around me. Is it's like we're the first in our family to do this, to create the next level of wealth or to create a next level of love. You'll bump up against all of your unconscious set points to create something you've never created before. And that is not a comfortable experience, but it's really exciting.
Entrepreneurship is so exciting. And that's one of the reasons why I hate to see women and men just give up. And I love the analogy that you gave earlier, why people do what they do. They envision all the excitement, but when they start hitting these roadblocks, they give up. And that's what I see happening in my space quite a bit. So, what does it look like to build a business that's based on true choice?
The 4 fundamental true choices, because what I have found is most people, in my experience, don't have any idea what they're choosing, which means that they're unconsciously choosing. So because we begin to filter, like, well, what do I want? What is a choice? What is a true choice? So a true choice, and this came from my mentor with his teachings and everything, Chris Duncan, is if you take all the choices off the plate and you were to put 4 back on, what he discovered, it's I choose the end result of a life I love. I choose the end result of health and vitality. I choose the end result of living my true nature and purpose. And I choose the end result of being the primary creator in my life. Now, I've added to resolve some resistance with me is also educating. I am the primary creator in my life, but I am not the only creator in my life. And I allow all others to do the same. Because then that gets me out of my ego of, I think everybody should be doing it the right way and blah, blah, like we do. So it's just helped me ease the reins up of my multidimensional control patterns that I have. A true choice is just because you would love it, right? You want to create health and vitality just because you want to be healthy and vital. We have to unpack that a lot, or I unpack that a lot with my clients because we suck at making choices as human beings. There's like 7 different ineffective ways we make choices. It's just that we don't know that we're doing this. But the one that I see the biggest is most people are trying to create more money or the love relationship because they think that once they get that, then they'll be happy. And so it's like choice by a vehicle, which actually isn't the true choice because you can create the thing, but again, you won't allow yourself to be it. You'll still feel like you're not enough. And we've had so many understandings of actors and high influential people that have the dream life. They have the money, the relationship, the love, everything. And then they take their life because they still don't feel like they're enough. So I help guide, okay, borrow these true choices because then when you understand, now I'm consciously choosing and I'm choosing these choices in the morning. I'm directing my focus, my attention, and my intention. And then understanding the science about what happens when we put our observation on energy and what actually happens with that. Now we're starting to carve out that path towards what we would love instead of what we have survived. So that's the first part of it, is that true choice. And to me, where I think we've gotten really backwards is, and I've heard this with so many people, teaching alignment and manifestation and the law of attraction and positive mindset and positive emotions. It's those things that we've taught unintentionally literally just give us a way to self-suffer and to validate that we're not it. It's just a more sophisticated way for us to turn against ourselves. It feels good in the moment, but that's why so many people are in these self-help, never-ending loops.
The journey of discovery forever without any advancement.
Yep, the personal development purgatory, where the harder you work on yourself, and again, it's the intention. So the intention of a true choice is just because I would love it. But it takes a bit because that is against everything that we've been taught. So it gets real uncomfortable when you start claiming those true choices and all that resistance comes up. And then I just give them the tools to be able to set up the correct structure. So they're creating in the flowing structure. And it starts with that true choice of I'm the primary creator in my life. What would I love to create? Knowing that my creations don't change me. And then when the resistance comes up, to have the tools to be able to say, okay, we're going to teach the unconscious now that what I'm creating is safe to have. And then taking the action, which action is the highest form of communication to the body. So it doesn't matter what we say, because we say all the time, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. But when you don't do it, you're just teaching your unconscious. You're not a person of follow through. So it's really important. The 5 steps of setting up the creative structure is to set the desired end result, get into the end result emotion, feel what that's like, come back into the current reality. And this is where the tension comes in, is compared to that, what's it like now, with no judgment, but there's going to be so much judgment in the beginning. And compared to that, what's it like now? But that's how we pull it into the active experience, because in order to recode those instructions, we need to bring it into the active experience. And then setting up and saying, okay, based on that desired end result, you getting in touch with you to say, okay, what's my next obvious action? Taking the obvious action, and then you're carving out in that flowing path now.
You've unpacked a lot in just that period of time. And obviously, we could talk for hours because this is just the small little surface level of what you've presented today. Just now, you mentioned many different steps that have to happen from the first step and then going forward. What's one major action that you would provide to our audience in regards to something they can do immediately, either a daily practice or something they can do over this next week that can help them become more intentional rather than being reactive?
The 5 steps is how you create in the creative structure. So by all means, go back and listen to that. Get into the desired end result emotion, coming back to current reality. What's coming up? What's getting in the way? And then what's the next obvious action towards that reality? That may be too many steps. The action that changed my life was sitting in the morning for 10 minutes with my hand over my heart. And what that does is, there is so much science behind what's happening. Is immediately when you do this, you get out of your head and into your heart space. So you're now starting to listen to a different voice, even though your mind is going to get extremely loud in the beginning. But what happens is your brain now starts releasing serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine. So now you're chemically reconditioning your body as well. Your blood vessels in your heart are opening up and new blood is rushing in. And this is a great practice to do with somebody as well, because you start to get this feeling, and it's like having a heart on. It's literally, your heart is like, oh my God, like it feels so good. This is where the pleasure comes in, because this new energy is coming in, and we have heart cells that are scattered throughout our whole body. And when we start to get into this head heart coherence, when it changes our heart rate variability in the way of promoting life in our body, now our heart cells throughout our whole body start syncing up. And when we make choices from that state, we're going to make choices that are more in line with our true nature and purpose. And it takes 10 minutes a day. And just know, you don't have to be good at it. You just have to set a timer. If you do it within the first half an hour of waking up, you're most tapped into your unconscious. So you're going to be able to get into that program and start forging a new way while all of this amazing stuff is happening within the body. And it's so powerful. That was my 2-inch domino. I didn't realize it, but that changed everything.
Thanks so much for sharing that with our audience, Dustin. So if our audience would love to connect with you, where can they find you?
You can go to spirituallykinky.com. I'm spiritually kinky across every platform.
That's why I love the brand, right? It's not one that's overused.
And I wanted to dominate SEO, so I started everything from scratch. So I knew it was going to be a long game of building from zero. Growth is slow to start in the beginning, but I just feel like this is the key to our cages. And this is the conscious education that if we got this in work environments and health environments, we could start getting different results that were in the way of humanity, and not just repeating the patterns collectively that we've repeated.
Yes. And I know you have a school community. Is there anything else coming up that you love to promote or share with our audience?
Yes, actually, on June 27th, and this was going to be a collab. And unfortunately, my collab knew it was going to happen. She jumped in. She jumped right back out because as soon as that happened, she got afraid and she's just not been in the game for a little while. So collabing with her for like a day, though, I really understood that everybody seems to have this idea of wanting to chase money. And we don't really have blocks around money. We have patterns that are avoiding freedom, choice, love, and authority. And so I'm creating a half-day immersion where you can come and you're going to get a 90-day plan. We're going to walk through the Conscious Education Foundation. I'm going to walk you through how to actually create that bridge to freedom, whether it's mental freedom, emotional freedom, creative freedom, freedom into being yourself and your true nature and purpose. You're going to get the actual practical steps in a 90-day plan, because I think that that's really missing in a lot of the teachings.
Is there a separate link for that event, or is it going to be on your website?
It will be on Spiritually Kinky and all the places. I'm going to be announcing it on my podcast, but it will be June 27th. And again, if anybody wants to reach me, send me a message. I respond to all of my personal messages, all of my comments. I am a team of my self-conscious, my unconscious, and my superconscious at this point. One of us will answer you back and get you the information. I think it's really needed in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. You never know which one you're going to get when you reach out to Dustin. But I actually really do appreciate you being on today's show. I've learned a lot already. I'm even reflecting on a few things. Whenever we have these gatherings together, you start thinking about little just gaps that are in your life, little roadblocks, things that are preventing you from ultimately reaching that place, like you stated, the creation place. I just want to thank you again for all the tips and tricks that you've given us today. If anyone wants to connect, we will have all the links and everything available on all the syndicated podcasts across all platforms so that you can reach Dustin Wheeler directly. Again, we thank you for being on today's show.
Thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate it. And I really do hope that the idea of structure blew your mind, because that to me was the missing piece of why I kept beating my head against a wall and nothing was really changing. Or when I came up against those constraints that you were talking about, where we really do begin to pull back, procrastinate, self-sabotage, just understanding that it's not personal, it's just because you're creating in the wrong structure, gives you so much power back into tapping into your innate powers of creation, your choice, your focus, and your flow.
Thank you so much, Dustin.
You're so welcome. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Uncensored Entrepreneurs. If you're getting value from the show, take a minute to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you tune in. It helps more bold entrepreneurs find us. Until next time, keep showing up, uncensored and unapologetic. And we'll catch you on the next episode.